Welcome back on the AM show. Now, to kickstart our discussions this morning, we focus on the cocoa industry. Cocoa farmers are agitated following China's entry into the sector in recent times. We had quite a number of, cocoa beans produced, sent to the chocolate capital of the world, Brussels, in Belgium. What are the pros and cons? What should we be looking out for as a country? Should we be concerned? Delving into the issues with us this morning, we have Fifi Boafo, who is Head of Public Affairs with CocoaBot. He joins us from the standpoint of that major player, CocoaBot. Anthony Morrison is CEO of the Chamber of Agribusiness. And we also have Nana Aye, a cocoa farmer, a traditional ruler from Asin Esunaso, and also a cocoa farmer. Thank you very much for joining the conversation wherever you are. And I'd like to say to Nana, a very good morning to you.
Thank you.
Great. So as we as we have this conversation, let me just salute Anthony Morrison as well, and Fifi Boafo. A very good morning to you, gentlemen.
Good morning. Very good morning.
Okay. I see your cameras may be in, is it landscape? Okay, so we'll keep it like that, but thank you for joining the conversation. So just to give a bit of a backdrop or a background to this story, in recent times we heard that China had exported a large number of kilograms, over 400, to Belgium. And we had the Agric Minister respond and say that the quality of our cocoa beans is unsurpassed, and so it is not a major problem. He says that the international market opting to pay up to 25%, 15 to 25% on the premium price goes to spell that out. The background again indicates that Ghana produces between 800,000 and 900,000 metric tons of cocoa, the Ivory Coast producing over 2 million of those. But how much of a concern is this? Let's come into the studio and start the discussion from here. Nana, you're a cocoa farmer.
Yeah.
How big is the land that you cultivate cocoa on?
Well, personally, mine, I have over 100 acres.
Over 100 acres?
Yes. And
right.
It's not big enough. I mean, if you really want to farm and make profit, let's focus on the smallholder farmer,
right,
for now, and see whether if they are making money or not. If you really sit down and do your calculations, it's a miracle how farmers are still in business. It's a miracle because if you do your calculations, the amount of times you have to take care of the farm, labor cost and everything, it's a miracle.
So I was going to ask what the state of the cocoa farmer is. How do you describe yourself as a cocoa farmer?
Yes.
Are you a small-scale farmer? Are you how would you describe yourself?
Well, I'm a medium-scale farmer.
Medium-scale.
You know, if you're talking about a small-scale farmer, we're looking at a 1 acre, 2 acre farmers, and they're all over. Okay, you only see these large farms when you go to the western north area. But a southern part of the western area in the central region, some part of the Ashanti region, and some areas in the Volta and the eastern, majority of us are small-scale farmers. Yeah.
So I'll go back to the state of the farmer, cocoa farmer in Ghana. What are the major challenges you see in here? Because we're talking about cocoa farmers nowadays selling off their land to people who want to do galamsey. Of course, we're treating the galamsey menace, but that's something else on its own. We're seeing cocoa farmers resorting to now planting rubber trees and all of that. It's our reality. What is the state of the cocoa farmer? What are the challenges you're facing?
Good. You see, the challenges didn't start today. Okay. If you come to my area, for instance, one, we have issues with labor. Two, our forest is being degraded, not by the miners alone, by illegal loggers.
Wow.
You can't even go to the Forest Commission in your area to complain. Nothing will happen.
Nothing will happen.
Nothing absolutely will happen. That is the problem now. If you come to my area, look, you always hear chainsaw machines running in the night, and you will complain to the forestry department and nothing happens.
And all of it is illegal. These are illegal loggers.
Yes, illegal loggers. And you know, look, there's something about farmers. When you approach the typical farmer, I mean somebody from my village, Krasini, as we call ourselves, okay, the person can go so far. A little intimidation, the person withdraws. And sometimes you need the support of the police, the community. Being a chief, sometimes I'm a little different. I'm a little bit confrontational. I will get up and do certain things. But most farmers, when they get up to talk, nobody listens to them and they quarrel back. That is the problem. So our issues is not just illegal miners. They have come to dominate the conversation now. It is a problem, but we have illegal loggers in our community cutting down the few trees coverage for the cocoa farmers.
Right.
And because of that, we've seen some patterns of rainfall that is not right. Normally, around this time, farmers will be clearing their land, preparing their cocoa farms, pruning, doing fertilizer. Guess what? The rain has come in early, okay? And as I sit here for the past 2 weeks, and I haven't seen rains in my area. It is a big problem. And this is an area where I will beg cocoa farm, cocoa board to look at very carefully. You know, come up, study the weather, and educate the farmers so that we'll be abreast with what is going on. If you go to my village today, we don't know what is happening. People know that the weather has changed. They'll tell you that the weather has changed because, look, they've been farming for the past 50 years.
Right.
Okay, and they've seen the weather change. But I haven't seen a very good program for cocoa farmers, like cocoa board coming on board to tell us, look, the rain pattern has changed. Let's change the way we do our farming. Let's plant at this month instead of we used to do 10 years ago. We used to plant at this month. You see, we need something like that. So
you're not seeing cocoa board, you know, leveling up in that respect to ensure that our cocoa production even remains at a certain level.
Yes, you see, for the past year now, just about 3 weeks ago, we had a forum in my village. I couldn't go. I elected somebody to represent me. Cocoa Board came to the village to talk to us about agrochemicals, new fertilizer that is coming on board. You see, those things are okay. But the main thing is our livelihood there, okay? The trees are being cut off. The weather is changing. And we want to see some strong education on that for farmers.
Okay. I'll cross over to Anthony Morrison and, you know, others. But so the point to be made is this. I mean, the head PRO of Cocoa Board. But the point to be made is this. I want you to just hit the nail on the head. Don't skirt the issues. Are you contemplating at any point, would you, if you had other alternatives, would you stop cocoa farming and move on to something else? We've seen some of your colleagues do that. Is that something you've thought about before?
Yes, but why will a farmer give away his farm to miners? Because there's no money in it. You understand? If you sit down quietly, I mean, do your analysis. Okay, for the smallholder farmer, I talk about the smallholder farmer because they are the majority. Okay, if you sit down and do all your analysis, it is very expensive. And I don't think the smallholder farmer is making money. I think something could be done. Cocoa Board can work with that. They must come up with something.
Right.
Okay? Otherwise, few people will be, you know, selling their lands to miners. And also, you see, rubber is creeping in. Okay. Years ago,
and even with the rubber, we're not processing the rubber, and we're sending it outside. It is used to make tires and other things, and it's sold back to us here in Ghana by the South Koreas and other countries. So we are not even tapping the most we can out of rubber.
Well, I'm a farmer. My job is to produce. It's up to the authorities to do something about that area. I just want to focus on how is the cocoa farmer doing. You understand? If if the authorities, that is Cocoa Board and government, if they don't step in quickly and do something, people will start giving away their cocoa farms.
Anyway,
let me finish. Let me come in this. That, last year we saw Cocoa Board bringing in some mechanization systems like pruning and those small equipments for weeding and stuff like that. Look, it was a good idea, but I don't know what if Cocoa Board has done some research to see the impact of that machine that was brought to the farmers.
Right.
When you talk to the farmers, it's very difficult to use those equipment.
I see.
Yes, it's very difficult to. This morning when I was coming, I just spoke to some few farmers in my area. Just wanted to pick some fresh ideas from them to see so that I can also contribute here.
Right.
And the machines are very difficult to manage, to work with. So as I sit here, if you come to my farm, I'm still using the old way of cutting or weeding my farm.
So interesting dynamics we're actually getting into here when it comes to cocoa production. Oftentimes we sit far away in Accra and we think everything is good. We're hearing now that everything is not that rosy. But let me bring in Tony Morrison, CEO of the Chamber of Agribusiness. From where you sit, you interact with a lot of farmers. What would you say you have seen to be the major challenges to cocoa production in Ghana that we ought to be addressing? Before I go to Mr. Boafo, who would sum up some of these matters.
Thank you very much, my good friend Benjamin, and good morning to my dad, Nana, who is in the studio with you. Yes, Benjamin, first of all, one major current issue is the issue of climate change.
Right.
And this is where governments and other organizations who are within the cocoa value chain needs to be addressing now. Climate change is becoming very evident with us, and we need to look at it. Another issue, and I'll quote the World Bank's 2020 report that says that African farmers can make up to $1 trillion if they adopt technology, irrigation, and mechanization. Our own 2018 agriculture census states that over 57% of our rural farmers still uses rudimentary technologies. And if they adopt new technologies such as irrigation, mechanization, and others, they'll be making over 30% marginal profit on their farms. So that tells you the current or the prevailing challenges with the industry, and it's widely acknowledged everywhere. Government needs to set up and put in a long-term strategy. For me, we are in the world of geopolitical and geo-trade and commerce. And every country, as Ghana, who prioritize its commodities, especially cocoa, should be able to have probably a 50 or 100 years long-term strategy. Because each and every year, other countries are looking at foreign policies. And these foreign policies include trade, commerce, and various other ways. And these foreign policies are inducing itself a geopolitical strategy of destabilization of another country to make their country more powerful in whatever they want to do. And this is the world of strategy we find ourselves. Look at the countries that produces 70% of the world's cocoa: Ivory Coast, Ghana, Nigeria, Cameroon. All these 4 countries produces 70% of the world's cocoa. Look at the countries that produces the top chocolates in the world. And you mentioned US, Germany, Switzerland, and Western Europe. Western Europe alone makes up 35% of the world's chocolate production. US makes 30%. So what are we doing as a country? Very good. We have some commodities that students uses, homes and hospitals uses. Okay, is there any way we can intensify the production and consumption of some of these products? Now, on the side of government, what is the long-term strategy to protect agriculture farms? You see, the point here is that we need to put this into its right context. It's not about just cocoa, but it's about the food security of this country. If we are losing our agricultural lands, at the same time, we should be thinking of importing food heavily. And we can control what we import because we need to feed our people. As I'll give you a 50 kg. It's now being sold at 120 Ghana. In fact, just as yesterday, I'm being told it's being sold at 140 for the same price. That should tell you what the world strategy is going. Brazil that export over 200 million metric tons of maize have reduced their importation. So as a country, what we need to do is to safeguard first and foremost our agricultural lands, because that is very, very critical towards the survival of this country.
Okay. So
if we do not safeguard our agricultural lands, that will be a challenge.
Okay, so Morrison, we're facing some technical, issues in there, but very important points you've made, and the bit about Africa being able to raise about $1 trillion from cocoa production. It tells you just how much we're missing out on countries like the Ivory Coast, Ghana, Nigeria, among others, Cameroon and all. But let me come to Fifi Boafo now. You speak for Cocoa Board. I want you to succinctly deal with some of the issues that Nana and Tony Morrison have raised in respect of illegal logging, in respect of a lack of proper education, even on weather patterns and changes when it comes to cocoa farming, and also in respect of some of the mechanization drives Cocoa Board has engaged in. Apparently, some of the tools you are giving the farmers, they serve no real purpose because they can't use them in the first place. How do you react?
Well, thanks for the opportunity. Now, I'd like to say that I owe Nana a lunch because most of the things he's talked about are spot on. There are things we are very much aware of and then we are taking actions. But I think the challenge really has to do with the fact that probably there's some form of information gap and there's the need for us to bridge that gap. Nana talked about the fact that the slashes which were given to the farmers, they're having issues with its usage. Let me admit and say that we have that complaint. What we've realized is that
a bit of a challenge there with Fifi Boafo's connection. Okay. Please go on, Mr. Boafo. Go on. We can hear you now. So this is what we're going to do as Mr. Boafo tries to reconnect. We're having a conversation on cocoa production in Ghana. China has started, exporting cocoa, at least their very first batch going to Brussels, the chocolate capital of the world. The point to be made is, are we doing enough to actually hold our own? Please go ahead.
Hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead, Mr. Boafo.
Very well. Now let's talk about the slashes. The slashes serve two purposes. One is to use it as a pruner and to use it to weed the farm. With the use of it as a pruner, so far, we've not had any complaints, and I think it served the farmers well the last cocoa season. However, using it as a slasher, it has come with its own set of challenges. What we've asked our staff to do at the local level is to retrain the farmers on its usage, because I think that the training that was done was not comprehensive enough, and the farmers were unable to grasp the how its usage is supposed to be. So what we're doing at this moment is to get our staff back to go train the farmers such that the farmers will be able to use these slashes to serve the purpose for which it was bought. On the issue about the rainfall pattern, it's a very, very serious issue which all of us as a country must look at, because there are several activities that are affecting the rainfall pattern. Logging, just like Nana talked about, illegal galamsey or illegal mining. Nana's area might not have seen the extent of devastation caused by illegal mining. But if you move outside Central region to areas such as Ashanti, Western and Western North, in some parts Eastern region, the level of devastation caused by illegal mining is huge. And the people are in the forest mining, causing this rainfall pattern to change because of deforestation. So yes, it is something which all of us as a country must work on. In fact, Cocoa Board, as we speak, is engaging the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources on a number of things that can be done. Unfortunately, because of time, I'm unable to go through all those.
You can go ahead and mention some of them, because I want to find out from you, Mr. Boafo, what exactly, sometimes we talk about these issues and we re-echo the problems. What exactly is Cocoa Board seeing as a solution or solutions that can be brought to bear, especially in terms of the climate change issues, especially in terms of illegal logging and the surrounding issues? So even before this national consultative bit on Galamsey, what has Cocoa Board been doing to address these issues? Maybe in a minute.
Okay, that's fine. And I'll talk about the fact that if you look at the rainfall pattern, it is changing. Because of that, Cocoa Board is in discussion to procure a system that will be able to monitor rainfall pattern in the various cocoa growing areas and use it as a basis to advise farmers on when to do what, because the rainfall pattern determines when you are supposed to prune, when you are supposed to put fertilizer on your farm, when you are supposed to spray and all that. That is ongoing. Beyond that, there are these illegal miners who are taking farms that belong to cocoa farmers. Of course, Cocoa Board does not on its own have the power to stop somebody. But of course, there's a proposal before the ministry for an action where before you get the permission, for example, to bring down a cocoa farm to undertake mining activity, there's some cost and there are some actions you are supposed to undertake before you are able to do so. And these proposals are preventive, we believe, such that they will make it difficult for these persons to cut the farms down and then take over and use it for other purposes. In time past, if you look at the laws and the regulations and the conventions we've had, they did not seem to serve this purpose, for which reason this action has been taken. Of course, the general issue about illegal mining and illegal logging, that goes beyond the capacity of Cocoa Board, and I would like to allow people who are seized with the rightful powers to speak to that.
Right.
Yes, the issue, Nana talked about the use of technology, and I think it's a very valid point. But of course, it brings back to the fact that our farmers also have a little bit of a challenge in adopting new things. The classes we are talking about, for example, there are those who even tell you that, and I say, I feel your microphone machine, but of course, we believe that it's human nature. And gradual interaction and education and sensitization. So we are working on that as well. There was a talk about irrigation. Yes, Cocoa Board has already
started. And maybe you can summarize and then wrap up on that point for this batch of questions. So please go ahead, Mr. Boafo. Mr. Boafo, so wrap up on that point so we can move on with regard to the conversation.
Sorry, I didn't get that.
So I was saying wrap up on that point so we can move on with the conversation, Mr. Boafo.
Okay, that's fine. The issue about using technology. At the moment, Cocoa Board is piloting irrigation. And so far, the result has been amazing. If you look at the facility that was procured from the African Development Bank, part of that facility is going into irrigation for cocoa farmers. And that is ongoing because we believe that with the current trend of a rainfall pattern, without the introduction of irrigation, farmers are going to have a challenge. But also to let Nana understand, and of course, I'm sure he does, because looking at the knowledge exhibited, he's someone who understands the industry. Part of our problem also has to do with the fact that our land tenure system has not helped our cocoa farmers to procure a larger scale of land for the producing of cocoa. So you have our farmers using very small piece of land, and that's all the concentration is. But with such a small land, it will be difficult for you to. So it clearly.
But I think at least I get the point with the land tenure system, and that's such a small piece of land. Of course, it will be difficult to manage. Even the nutritional or the nutrients in the soil would, at a point in time, be minimal, and then producing cocoa would be a problem. But let me come to you now. With what is happening now, China has started producing cocoa. Our agric minister says it's only small scale. They didn't even produce up to 1 ton of cocoa. But how much of a threat is that? China has the human resource, they have the land. How much is that a threat to you, a cocoa farmer?
Well, you see, I am just an ordinary cocoa farmer.
Right.
Okay. My job is to produce cocoa. It's up to the government to make sure that I'm also protected. Now, China is going into cocoa production. How are they doing it? Is China going to start producing a lot more cocoa so that the buyers will have another alternative?
Belgium is buying from them now.
Exactly.
And Belgium has the highest standards when it comes to cocoa. So if they are buying from China, it means the Chinese are getting something right, and it means
Is it
be a threat.
Why are they buying from China now? Is it because they don't have enough? Is it because our cocoa is not good enough? Has it deteriorated? These are questions that we have to ask. You understand? Let me also come in and tell you some of the challenges locally. Okay, the threat to us. Just this year, it was very difficult for our cocoa agents to pay us our money. When we sell our cocoa to the agents, money wasn't coming. You understand? That is also a threat. I'm not afraid of China, what China is going to do, but I'm afraid of my local agencies not being able to pay me.
Right.
Okay.
The middle people.
The middle people. If my cocoa clerk, we call them the cocoa crusher, is not able to pay me when I weigh my cocoa, why should I even bother doing cocoa farming if I can plant rubber? So these are some of the things I think government to look at it. I want Fifi Boafo, I'd like to see Fifi Boafo after this program for us to have more education on certain things. Look, labor in cocoa farming. Look, when you harvest your cocoa, you need about 10 people to do about 2-3 tons of cocoa if you have to break them apart and prepare them for drying and stuff like that. There are machines that can do these things. If Cocoa Board is going to look at these things to cut labor down for the Ghanaian cocoa farmer, I think we can do something. Otherwise, the real threat, it's down there at the cocoa farming areas.
The real threat is down there in the cocoa farming areas. For Nana, he's not so bothered about China getting into the business, but the fact that maybe he is not getting value for what he has produced, that he's not getting his money on time and all of that. He's already spoken about illegal logging and all of those. But let me come to you, Tony Morrison. Is this an existential threat when it comes to China, for the first time in a long while, actually producing cocoa beans and exporting them to Belgium? Do you see that as a threat?
Yes, Benjamin. With the chamber, we continue to do our intelligence and forecasts. We are of major concern in that there are a few things when it comes to the geopolitical arena and what can be done. It's a long-term strategy. We can see the likes of China's technological powers, human resource, capital resource, and what they are capable of doing. In 10 years or 15 years, it could be worse. If China, we know the long-term, how long it takes to produce coal. What it takes to do, they have the high skills. Their skills of production is so high compared to the Ghanaian sector. I chair the Ghana Agriculture Sector Skills Council, and I can tell you the low rate of skills in the industry. China will have a very high skill, and for them to churn out larger quantities and better cocoa, very high compared to us. And China can also decide to sell at a very low price. Okay, so a likelihood of a major world cocoa price crash that will affect us. Now, another issue we should be looking at is major financing for some of the critical areas or the critical sectors that we mentioned, especially processing. This is the time we need to start increasing the consumption, processing and consumption of cocoa value chain products. Now, we also need to look at the cost of production cocoa per acre in Ghana. If we can reduce the cost of producing cocoa in Ghana, Because I know once China begins to set in, if the cost is about 4,500 to produce cocoa, China could probably be doing less, and that they could start dictating the world market price. If they're able to produce probably 20% or 30% in the next 5 to 10 years,
let me just chip in, Morrison. Let me just chip in this bit very briefly. Our great minister says that the quality of our cocoa is so high that they give us premium between 15% and 25% on our cocoa. Should that not be enough to erase such concerns?
It's a matter of time. It's a matter of time.
It's a matter of time.
For instance, Ecuador produces the best cocoa. Ecuador produces the best cocoa, but that is only small quantity. Now, we produces Ivory Coast, Ghana, Cameroon, Nigeria produces one of the best, but in quantity. So let's put that into each right context. But I must say that these advanced countries are always on the look for how to reduce the cost of production and make more money on the market by value addition. So this should be our critical point.
Okay.
Now, I also want to look at the law, the cocoa law, the cocoa board stronghold in the industry. If this continues, what I want to suggest is we have so many smallholder farmers who are participating in the industry. Is there any way we can introduce economic skills diversification for them to be able to be more productive within the value chain and allow or find a way of giving incentives to huge national companies? It could be, how do you call it, commercial bank. It could be GNPC, who can go and invest probably about 6,000, 10,000 hectares of cocoa. Can we do something like that? Because that is the strategy of China. China are not depending on smaller holder farmers. China are depending on huge multinationals who has been given a lot of tax exemptions and to go into that. So if we are depending on smaller chains, it's increasing day by day, and they are also losing their farms. Can we now start to look at huge commercial farms for our cocoa?
So very forceful points that you've made, Mr. Morrison. Very forceful points you've made there. And I think it is time now for us to get some of those answers or some of those reactions from Mr. Boafo. We're wrapping up on the conversation, yeah? But Mr. Boafo, I want you to respond to some of these issues that have been raised and map the way forward. What is COCOBOD going to be doing? What should we look forward to? And then I'll take the final comments from Nana and Mr. Morrison as well.
Well, let me say that most of the things we are talking about is based on information which are either not accurate or not exactly what it is. During this conversation, and in fact,
technology.
The things I have heard is either not the case or it is probably based on information which is not accurate. So, for example, during this morning's conversation, I have heard that they have a large tract of land, and for that reason, they are producing a lot of cocoa. To start with, what we are talking about is cocoa that has been produced in Hainan province. The entire land size of Hainan province is 34,000.
Let's just quickly put this into perspective, Mr. Boafo. Let's just put this into perspective. The discussion has not been that they have large swathes of land on which they are producing cocoa. We all know that where they produce the cocoa, it was just a small parcel of land. The point is that China has a lot of land, and if they decide to do this on a commercial level, we can't compete with them. That's the point to be made. Please go ahead.
China as a country may be big, but you ask yourself, which part of China is good for cocoa production? Of course, there are those who also talked about, for example, the use of technology and genetics. The very area we are talking about is a small island where cocoa is planted. If you assess that area, it has some semblance of Indonesia, Malaysia, and Indonesia and Malaysia are cocoa-producing countries. So yes, they will be able to produce cocoa using the support of technology. However, There are issues like frost, which when it happens, and of course the experience sometimes with a weather temperature of 5 to 6. What then happens is that you lose every pod on the tree. On top of that, these are places that experience heavy wind, and when every year that they experience that heavy winds, they will lose every pod they have on the tree.
Unfortunate. Some very important points that Mr. Boafo is making, but apparently the connection is not that good. But he's talking about the fact that, well, looking at the temperatures in China, frost in itself could decimate cocoa trees and all of that. But should we count on that and think, well, these are the weather patterns there? And so I've seen countries where apples are not grown, doing magic, so to speak, and producing certain crops that normally you wouldn't find there, even strawberries. So I don't know what your quick take is on that. Your concluding thoughts in about a minute, Nana.
Well, I am not, honestly, I am not worried about China because I haven't done any research or looked into what China can do in terms of cocoa production. I just want my government to look at what is happening here, okay, to bring in more technology, okay, some sort of mechanization to reduce the cost of cocoa production in Ghana. Okay, if government is able to do that, and I'm willing to talk to Mr. Boafo, okay, sometimes I know Cocoa Board is always on the ground, but sometimes they have to also listen to some of us, okay, to also tell them certain things that is going on. Look, we need labor cost in Ghana, okay, on the cocoa farms to go down. Okay, if we are able to do that, we'll see some differences in our cocoa production.
All right. Mr. Morrison, you have a minute with your wrap-up thoughts. And then since the line went dead at a point, Mr. Boafo, I'll give you a minute and then we'll wrap up. So, Mr. Morrison, your final comments. Mr. Morrison, if you can hear me, we can take your final comments on this. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So as a country, we need to look at our long-term strategy. Mr. Fifi, let me tell you, the chamber does a lot of intelligence work when it comes to this industry. We just don't sit down and come to radio or TV or public and make statements. We make statements with facts. And if you look at the industry, the introduction of technology, hybrid seeds, a number of things are coming that are taking away some of the old challenges that have been experienced, okay? If you look at the Cocoa Board statement yesterday that they came, the statement itself shows some worry and concerns over the China issue, right? So we need to put issues in its right context. I mean, you have been very disingenuous with facts this morning, and I'm not happy about it. Because as a country, we need to be very strategic. What is our long-term strategy? What is Cocoa Board's own long-term strategy? 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. These are the things we need to be concerned with. Now, as a country, what are we doing to make sure that we improvise on the use of technology? I mean, using slashes and just weeders alone are not enough. A lot of things have been done. Disease control, a lot of heavy chemicals on our cocoas. All these things are very critical points that actually affect the cost of our pricing. So we need to look at it. But Benjamin, I want to end here with the fact that as a country, when we put our policies right, let the farmer, let those who are concerned with the policies understand. And when we are formulating policies, when we go to them in the consultative process, let us inculcate most of their concerns in the policy. That is when the people that the policies are supposed to affect will get themselves engaged in making sure that the policies succeed. Policies are not meant to roll or work on themselves. It is the humans or those who are the stakeholders that actualize the policies and they make them very fruitful and successful.
Thank you very much, Mr. Morrison. And in the studio, just so you appreciate it, Mr. Boafo, Nana is here saying, yeah, and nodding his head. So I don't know, is that in agreement with, just to confirm, is that in agreement with what Mr. Morrison is saying?
Yeah.
Okay, so I just wanted to know that. So Mr. Boafo, you have a minute to respond to this so we can wrap up. What do you have to say?
I'm sure Nana's response did not have to do with describing what has been said as disingenuous. But anyway, and I thought probably that was uncalled for. Beyond that, if someone makes the point that Ecuador produces the best cocoa in the world, that's inaccurate. What Ecuador does is that it produces fine flavor cocoa. Fine flavor cocoa enjoys higher premium, but in terms of quality of cocoa, that is not the case. Beyond that, there's an issue about quality of the Chinese, what China is doing. There was a report I was reading yesterday. It has to do with assessment of the Chinese cocoa. This dates back 2013. So China, in actual fact, have been producing cocoa since 2013. So it's not something new that just happened this morning. On top of that, there's a talk about the huge cocoa that has been produced. Just to let Nana and other persons who are cocoa farmers and concerned about cocoa industry understand, what China has done is that they have produced less than 8 bags of cocoa. And they say that, okay, it's because of the quality of cocoa, that is why now they are resorting to China. If I decide, for example, to use my backyard garden to produce something, obviously, it's an innovation. People will love the idea that, oh, at least there's a backyard garden something. Is it large scale? What all of us must assess at this point in time is what China is doing. To what extent? There are those who have even suggested that if it is an entire province they were going to use to plant cocoa, that would be very small, looking at the size. Beyond that province, are there other parts of China that have similar geographical location and advantages or climates that will help them produce cocoa? That's what we are doing now. On top of that, there's also the need for us to ask ourselves about the question of cost of production, because the scientists have made me understand that if you look at the frost, if you look at the high winds in those areas, if we decide to plant cocoa, for example, in China, there will be years where we'll not even produce.
Wow, Mr. Boafo making some...
Unlike being able to produce less than 8 bags of cocoa at this point in time. So yes, we believe that China has done something, but we also need to be mindful of the kind of spin and the kind of exaggeration and hyperbolic we become about on this issue. Because if you are assessing an issue, assessing is based on the fact helps you. But instead, if you choose to rather introduce your own set of facts and use it as a basis for discussion, it dilutes the whole conversation, and you do not really appreciate the issues which you are dealing with.
Okay.
Yes, we are all reading about what China has done. It's not a case that Cocoa Board or Ghana is asleep. No, we are not asleep. We are assessing the various aspects of it. There are those who have been talked about the shipments. There are those who have talked about what they are gaining from Belgium on that. We have a team that is working on this. We have a team that is assessing what is being done in China. So please, I am just appealing to all those who are concerned that this is not the time to panic. But of course, there's a need for you to observe and analyze and act based on that.
Okay.
So please, I will plead, the introduction of facts that are non-existent will not help the conversation.
Thank you, Mr. Boafo. Thank you very much. And I just want to end on this note. As a citizen and as a patriot, my hope and prayer is that this does not come to bite us in future, and that the sort of analysis we've made here will not come and sit here again years to come and say, oh, well, they've been producing since 2013, but now take a look. Things have gone south. It is my hope and prayer that Cocoa Board will be able to do the right things, be strategic, like Anthony Morrison has said, and like Nana here has said, put in the right mechanisms so that whether it has to do with mechanization, whether it has to do with illegal logging activities that is disturbing the farmers, and even money matters, monetary issues, they'll be dealt with so that our farmers are comfortable and we can keep our lofty position when it comes to cocoa production. But I'd like to say a very big thank you to you, Fifi Boafo, head of the public relations department at Cocoa Board, and of course Anthony Morrison of the Ghana Chamber of Agribusiness, and finally Nana Aye, the second traditional chief of Asin Esunaso, and also a major player in the cocoa industry, a farmer. You have something brief to add?
I just want to speak to Fifi Buafo of the program. Yeah.
15 seconds.
No, of the program.
That'll be off the program.
Yes, yeah.
Fine. So thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining the conversation.